Hey girl, so I'm going to try and film this for you. So here's the process that I go through. I'm doing it on my iPad, so it's a little funky. So I start with it opened in Lightroom. I start by bumping the temperature down just a little bit. Just a little bit bluer. Tends to work out better that way. I touch up the exposure a little bit. An underexposed picture is easier to fix than an overexposed, so if your photos are dark, it's not the worst thing. I like to bump the contrast. I usually do that in the end after I do everything else, but I start with it a little bit up there. Let's see, I go the highlights, you can kind of play with them, see what's brightening as you move it. You can go like all the way to the end and see like what is dark and what is light, and then pull it back to what looks appropriate. So that looks good for now. Doing the shadows one right now will take care of more of that. So as you take the shadows up though, sometimes things get a little bit washed out, so don't overdo the shadows. The whites I bump just a little bit, but I think his shirt's gonna go, and you'll lose the pattern if you do the whites too much. See, if you go too much, it's just like way too much. So I just bump that a little bit. And then the blacks, at least on the portrait photos, I take down a little bit to make things a little bit darker, or the things that should be dark. On newborns, though, I usually bump the blacks up. Clarity, I like to bring it up. It makes it look more HD, if you know what I mean. It kind of takes the place of contrast, so I bump the clarity. Vibrance I do just a little bit, because you don't want it to be like shocking colors or anything, so I just bump the vibrance a little bit. I leave saturation alone because it usually like makes skin tones orange. Next I go into the individual colors and I adjust those. So on the red I always up the luminance just a little bit. You can go either end of the spectrum and see what it's gonna affect. So if you go all the way up, so if you go all the way down, you can see it's gonna get their lips in the middle of their faces. So then I take it back up to about 25 or so it doesn't look like they're glowing. Then I do the orange, same thing, just go all the way up, see what it does. So it's basically the rest of their skin tones. So just have like 15 or so on that. That's where you start to lighten up your photos, is really in the skin tones. Yellow I always take down on the saturation. And then if you ever think that their skin tone looks a little bit too orangey or reddish, just take the saturation down on orange and red, but don't do it too much because then they'll look really, really white and glowing. Green I usually just bump down a little bit on the saturation. I leave aqua and blue alone unless there's something that's really bothering you, like the blue, like maybe his blue shirt's bothering you, so if it is, just take the saturation down a little bit. If you think that her shirt is standing out too much, that I think would probably fall into aqua, so maybe take the saturation down a little bit, just so it's not like bouncing off the page. Let's see, purple I leave alone. Magenta is usually tied to skin tone, so I usually bump the luminance on that too. So if you go all the way up, you can see the only thing that's changing is those slippers. So those don't really need to be messed with, because if you do them too luminance, then they just glow. So sometimes you could take it down and make them darker, because that's one of the things you kind of want to stand out in the photo, because that was kind of the purpose of the photos, besides being family photos. Let's see. Then I go into detail. I do the noise reduction luminance slider here, so I just do a little bit of that. It just kind of softens the skin. Lens correction. Then I do remove chromatic aberration. Just check that box. I'll explain that why later. In effects, the post-crop vignetting here, I always do that at the end, but you can see where it is. So once I take it out with Photoshop, which is what I'll do now, so I go Photo, Edit in Photoshop, and then Edit with Lightroom adjustments, so it keeps everything you just did and takes it over to Photoshop. So now it opens up with Photoshop, and then, and then I edit again from here. And that's your other photo that I just did that is so adorable. Okay, so now what I start doing is I zoom in and look for things to correct on the face, so face blemishes. So I get the Band-Aid thingy, spot corrector. A really helpful tool in adjusting your size of your brush is the brackets buttons. Those are bigger and smaller, so you push them, makes it smaller instead of going up to the top up here and adjusting it with that. It's just way faster, so it's just like a shortcut. So it's hard to see on the video, but I just take out any face blemishes. If you're working on a laptop, you can tilt it, and that one came out pretty funky. You can tilt your laptop and see more blemishes, so if you tilt it up here, you can see some more things than if you're looking at it straight on, so I kind of do a combination of both. If you hit one and it turns out kind of funky, look up here at like proximity match and content aware and flip back and forth between the two of them, and you'll get, one of them will usually take care of it in the best way. I'm going to take out the wrinkles on his forehead. It makes him look less tired, but it kind of looks like it left a mark there. You can kind of see like a stripe, so I'm going to undo that one, and I'll try it with content aware. I don't really know how to explain the difference between the two, but yeah, that one made it look much cleaner. So sometimes with this one you have to do it in like little spurts too. You can't just do it in one long line. For whatever reason, it just works better if you do it in little increments. Everybody talks about making a new layer over here. I guess that's probably the smart thing to do, but I just never do it. But they say to make a new layer when you're adjusting. Let's see, yeah, so now his forehead looks a little cleaner. So he's got some lines between his eyes. We'll just clean those up too. Not too much because you don't want him to look totally perfect because that's not realistic, but... And then the one thing I always like to get with parents is the bags under their eyes. And see, like, it just made that weird line, so maybe we'll undo that one. Try it with proximity match and see how that looks. See, yeah, that one looks funky too.